Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I'll be reviewing the Yak-141 Freestyle, of which is a currently Tier 8 12.0 BR VTOL fighter that exists as a regular tech tree vehicle for the Russian Air Force's tech tree. In this video, I'll be going over everything that you need to know about this plane, including its stats, how it plays, I'll give its strengths and weaknesses, I'll go over some scores in several key areas, and then I'll give my final recommendation and if I feel if this vehicle is worth grinding for, purchasing, or not. As always, please consider subscribing if you'd like more content like this, as that would make you cooler than the Gaijin devs that put a prototype plane into WarThunder as a regular tech tree vehicle. But without further ado, let's get into the video. As always, I'll place its stat card here on the side of the screen. Things to know are its rate of climb, turn time, and weapons. Now for how it plays. In short, you can forget everything that you think that you know about VTOL aircraft and how they play in WarThunder. The Yak-141 is fast, has amazing acceleration off the line, which I guess could be counted for Harriers and the Yak-38, is very maneuverable unlike those other VTOLs, and is a capable dogfighter. Between its excellent overall performance and great missiles, the Yak-141 can play effectively from a variety of ranges and in a number of different situations. If you want to destroy an enemy from a long range, you have the R-27ER missile, with medium ranges being taken by the R-27R and T missiles, and the close-range dogfighting being handled by the venerable, though aging, R-60Ms. All of these missiles are all-aspect too. Ultimately, we may see R-73s and R-77s coming to the Freestyle, but that'll probably be in quite some time. Even still, with the aforementioned currently available missiles, the Yak-141 is more than capable and should be able to snipe enemies and dogfight with ease. It even has both pulse Doppler radar and 60 large caliber countermeasures, both of which will help tremendously in your typical combat scenarios. While the VTOL function does not work beyond about 550 kilometers per hour, it will still help with taking off and landing, if you so choose. Plus, unlike the Harriers that almost need in-flight thrust vectoring to improve maneuverability, the Yak-141 is plenty maneuverable without that function, and can essentially turn on a dime when compared to most similar BR aircraft, VTOL or otherwise. Now for close air support, the Yak-141 is much more basic. It can carry a number of different types of unguided bombs and rockets, with ballistic computers being standard for both types of ordnance, but it can only use 4 pylons to carry any sort of ordnance, be it air or ground. Unfortunately, the most powerful weapons in its inventory are only 500 kilogram bombs, as well as S-13OF and S-24B rockets, all of which pale in comparison to the more advanced ordnance carried by other aircraft around this BR. And all this is a somewhat forgivable thing in my opinion, as close air support is clearly not what this plane is built to do, but it may be something to consider when deciding whether or not you want to research the Yak-141. Now with all that said, let's get into its strengths and weaknesses. For its strengths, it has excellent acceleration, rate of climb, and a decent top speed, but you typically won't see much more than 1300 kilometers per hour at any one time. Second, it has good overall maneuverability, even some might consider it to be pretty great. For its third strength, though the Yak-141 only has 60 countermeasures, they are large caliber and work far better than standard countermeasures. Fourth, has pulse Doppler radar and IRST. For its fifth strength, it can carry the excellent R-27R, T, and ER missiles, which, when combined with the pulse Doppler radar, stand a great chance of getting a kill or 2 per match. The Freestyle also has a very powerful 30mm cannon, which can double for anti-air or anti-ground purposes. Beyond this, it has ballistics computers for both bombs and rockets. For its eighth strength, it has VTOL capability, and finally it has helmet mounted sights, which means that wherever you put your cursor on the screen, so long as it's within the gimbal limit of the missile, you will be aiming there and you can lock on with your missile in that spot, regardless of if your plane is directly targeting that location or not. Now with that said, for its weaknesses, while they are all aspect, the R60Ms on the Yak-141 are a bit lackluster, with relatively low range and a mediocre all aspect lock range. Second, while the weapons are fairly good for being unguided, the total ordnance capacity for CAS is fairly low on the Yak-141, with around 2,000 kilograms being the absolute maximum for this plane. Third, speaking of, the Yak-141 lacks guided weapons, which at 12.0 BR is a fairly big deal, at least if you're going for a multi-role fighter, which if nothing else, the Yak-141 is not. Now for its fourth weakness, unlike with the Harriers, the thrust cannot be vectored unless flying flying at a fairly low speed, meaning that you cannot set the thrust vectoring of the 141 and have it work to assist in turning at high speeds, though thankfully, as mentioned before, it doesn't really need this all too much. And finally, it has mediocre energy retention. Now with all that said, let's get into how I score this vehicle. In dogfighting and air RB, I give it an 8.25 out of 10. The Yak-141, with its intimidating set of both radar-guided and heat-seeking missiles, is a powerful beast to face in air combat. It has great maneuverability, a great cannon, great acceleration, helmet-mounted sights, and even has a good amount of large-caliber countermeasures. On the other hand, its current best close-range IR missiles are the R-60Ms, which are decent and are all-aspect, but are no longer the top of their class. In real life, the Yak-141 could carry the R-73s, so if we see that missile come to the Yak-141, I expect it to be even deadlier in air RB than it currently is, and thus receiving a higher score than an 8.25. Regardless, even with its so-so R-60Ms, met amount of missiles, being that it can carry 4 instead of the more typical 6 at this BR, and bad energy retention, the Yak-141 is still a hell of a dogfighter. For close air support, I give it a 4 out of 10. Unlike the Yak-38, the Yak-141 has no emphasis on close air support, and it shows. The freestyle has ballistics computers for both bombs and rockets, but lacks the ability to carry more than around 2,000 kilograms of anything in total into the battle. Even still, what it carries is all unguided and fairly rudimentary compared to the guided munitions of other aircraft. Regardless, it's all still fairly powerful and can still easily destroy enemy vehicles. Once done with that, you can turn the Yak-141 into a great air cover vehicle if you equip at least one missile, that is. One of the major downsides of this aircraft is the fact that it lacks wingtip missiles, meaning that if you decide to fill all 4 pylons with anti-ground ordnance, you will not be able to bring a missile into combat. So that is definitely something that you need to consider before going into a CAS role with this plane. Now with that said, overall, I give it a 7 out of 10. Yes, I know this score is wildly skewed in favor of the Yak-141's air combat capabilities, but that's because that's the role that most people will use it in, and also why this plane was created in the first place. This plane is surprisingly capable as a fighter, with both long and close range options for missiles, and even a very capable 30mm cannon, all topped off with the excellent helmet-mounted sight system. Though it is meh at close air support, the Yak-141 is still usable, but should only be played in this role if you're trying to impress someone, if you have no better aircraft for CAS available, or if you're really that good with this plane that you can make it into a great close air support aircraft despite its weaknesses in that role. Now with all that said, should you research and buy this plane? Yes, yes, and yes. VTOL aircraft in WarThunder get a fairly understandable rap of being unmaneuverable, subsonic, and depending on who you ask, clunky to use. The Yak-141 shakes all of these negative stereotypes and, in my opinion, is immediately the best VTOL aircraft in WarThunder regardless of BR, and may stay that way for a very long time, especially if its real-life missiles, again the R-73 and R-77s, come to its inventory. While again not a good close air support plane, it is still somewhat capable if nothing else. Regardless, between its impressive suite of weapons, performance, and technology, this is a great plane to own in WarThunder. For all these reasons, and all of the reasons mentioned earlier in this review, I both recommend this plane and give it my Tankenstein seal of approval. I am again extremely impressed with the Yak-141 and have had substantially more fun with it than I ever thought that I would. It has immediately become one of my favorite planes in WarThunder and will likely always be if Gaijin does not change it substantially. So you hear that, Gaijin? Don't change this plane. It is perfect as is. Now with that said, thank you all so much for watching. Please let me know what you think about this video and of the Yak-141 in the comments below. And also please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel if you like this type of content, as those are easily the best ways to support my channel. Now with that said, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.